This video is on basic, augmented, and diminished triads. There'll be another video on this that'll have some more advanced and more complicated augmented and diminished chords, but this is the basic one first. To augment something, to me, it means to make something larger, and to diminish something means to make it smaller. So those are just basic vocabulary words that will help you in this. So draw a treble clef staff here. So to take a major chord to minor, we've already learned that, you lower the third a half step. Okay? So you lower the third a half step. Now, to take a major chord to diminished, you lower the third and the fifth a half step. And to make a major chord augmented, which is usually abbreviated AUG, you will raise the fifth. So let's start with a major chord, and we're going to make it minor. So we're going to start with C major. Okay, this is the simple chords we're going to do here, and we're going to do another video with some more advanced chords. So C major, you got a C, E, and G. Well, to make a major chord minor, you lower the third. The third is an E, you lower it a half step to a E flat. And to make it diminished, to make a major chord diminished, you lower the third and the fifth. Well, we've already lowered the third, so all we have to do is take the fifth, which is the G, and we lowered it a half step to a G flat, and that would be a B, or a C diminished chord. Okay, so let's go to a, you draw a little bar on there so you realize these flats have nothing to do with what we're doing next. Let's go to an F major chord. There's an F major chord, F, A, and C. To make an F major chord minor, we lower the third, which is an A, a half step. And we lower the third, which is a C, a half step. That would be F diminished. Now you may think, well, this is a C flat, that's the same as a B. But you have to keep the C, the letter C or the note C, and you just make it sharp or flat or natural, or even later on we'll learn about double sharps and double flats in the more advanced video. But that's why early on in learning piano, it may not have made any sense to you. Why can a white key be considered a sharp? Like, why can an E sharp, why would you have an E sharp on the piano, which is basically the same as an F? Well, it's because it's going to fit these chords better. Why do we have a C flat on the piano? Well, because if we want an F diminished chord, we have to have an F, an A, and a C, and we have to change the A and the C to the proper places where they need to be flat or sharp. In this case, it needs to be a C flat. You couldn't write that as a C, an A flat, and a B, even though if you played it on the piano, it would be the same keys on the piano. That's not the proper way to write it on the staff and on music, and that's why you see C flats in your music instead of just B's sometimes. Let's do a couple more. All right, so let's go to a G major, G, B, and D. To make it minor, you lower the third a half a step, which is the B, and you lower the D a half a step, which is a D flat. So that's G minor. Now let's go to something a little bit more than this. Let's go to a D chord, a D, an F, and an A. Well, is that really a D chord? It is a D something, but it's not D major, because you should know that D major has an F sharp in the key signature, has an F sharp and C sharp. So this F would have to be sharp for that to be a major chord. So this chord is already minor. D, F, and A is a D minor chord. The F has already been lowered. If you were thinking a major chord, the F's already been lowered down to a F natural. So the only thing we have to do in a minor chord then is to lower the fifth, because the third's already been lowered. We lower that to an A flat. So that would be a D diminished chord. If you had this written like this, if you had it just written kind of like that right there with a sharp in it, So if somebody gave you a D major chord and they said, now you need to make that minor, well, then you would have to redraw it over here and you would actually have to put a natural sign there if the sharp's on, to show that you've lowered that, and then you can put the flat sign there. So that's what you have to do if you already have it. All right, so those are diminished chords, right? So let's go back and do a couple augmented chords then. So I said it's very important you know your key signatures. You have to know your key signatures to do any of these, or it can get very confusing. Okay, so we'll start with C again. I'm going to do a C major chord. To augment a chord, first make sure that it's major. Make sure it's a major chord, and if it's a major chord, then all you have to do is raise the fifth a half step. So I would just take the fifth. This is the first, this is the third, this is the fifth in the key of C major. So the fifth would be a G sharp. Now, if I went to a D, I said D, F, and A, and I wanted to make that augmented, well, I would have to know that that F has to be sharp. If I just went in and I just thought, well, let me raise the fifth, well, now I have a D, a F, and an A sharp. That's not an augmented chord. Okay, I would have to know that the F is sharp. I should know that the F is sharp in D major. So I have to put the sharps on there. So the first thing I need to do is make sure that I'm dealing with a major chord. So now if I put the sharp there, now that's a major chord. D, F sharp, and A is major. So now I could just simply raise the fifth a half step, which is the A, and I would have a D augmented chord. Okay, let's do a couple more on this. Let's go up to E. Let me draw a bar on so these sharps don't carry over to the next measure. This is the new system, new measure here. E, G, and B. Well, what chord is that? First of all, I need to realize this is an E minor chord. I should know that because that G should be sharp if I'm doing an E major chord. E major has a G sharp in it, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. So I need to make it a major chord first by making that a G sharp. Now I've got an E major chord. All I have to do to go from major to augmented is to raise the fifth a half step. That's a B. I would put a B sharp. Here again, I wouldn't change it to a C, even though a B sharp is a C on the keyboard. On the staff and on the music and understanding how to write it, I have to write it as a B sharp. So that would be an E augmented chord. All right, one more. Let's do F, A, and C. Well, is that an F major chord? Yes, that's already major. Okay, so since it's already major, all I have to do is raise the fifth a half step. So I'm going to put a sharp in front of the C, and that's a C sharp. So it's very important that you know your key signatures, because you can't really do this if you don't know that E major has the G should be sharp, or an F major, the F should be sharp. You need to know those things, so when you get into writing these, you'll understand how to do it. So let me do one more thing to show you all the chords. I'm going to do G major. Kind of get tired of C major all the time. Like I said, I always start with C major because it's something that you know and it's easy to see. But G major is pretty easy. So if I want a G major chord, G, B, and D. So this is G major. Now what if I want a G minor chord? To go from major to minor, I lower the third a half step. The third is the B, so I'm going to go to a B flat. So this would be G minor. What if I want G diminished? Well, there's my G chord. I have to lower my third and the fifth a half step. There's a third lower and the fifth lower. So this is G diminished. Now this can be written different ways. I'll show you in a second. But and then what if I want a G augmented? I go to my G major chord, G, B, and D. To go augmented, I raise the fifth a half step. And that would be G augmented. So, so that's what that's the different forms of the G scale. Now, sometimes when you have a G minor, I've seen it written with a capital G, with an M. I've seen it with a G with minor written out, abbreviated or written out. I've seen just a lowercase letter. So you can see it very different ways depending on who's writing this and what they're writing it for. A lot of times you'll see these chords on top of the staff and guitar cymbals in different genres of music, whatever you're doing. If you're doing pop music or country music or praise and worship music at church, a lot of times you'll see these chords written across the top, just these letters in some different ways, and whoever's writing them write them different ways. G diminished, sometimes you'll see G with a circle around, like a degree sign. Sometimes you'll see that it means diminished. For augmented, sometimes you'll see G with a plus sign, and sometimes these are lowercase and sometimes they're uppercase. They're just a little plus sign. That means G augmented. So anyway, you may see that in different ways too. But that's basically the way that you can rearrange the G chord to make it minor by lowering the third, make it diminished by lowering the third and fifth, and make it augmented by keeping the third and fifth regular and just raise the fifth. Keeping the 1 and the 3 and raising the fifth octave step. And that are the different forms of the G chords. And we'll have another video that will deal with some unusual and a little bit more advanced chords.